In this movie, we're going to look at composition and aggregation relationships. Both of these represent relationships where objects of one class are made up of objects of one or more other classes. As such, they represent whole-part relationships. In building a system, we'll come across many things that have this kind of whole-part relationship. Some will be in the business domain, such as invoice and invoice lines. Some will be in the design of the solution, such as a graphical user interface, and the buttons, text boxes, labels, and so on that make up the GUI. Some will have a strong relationship, where deleting an object of the whole class results in deleting the objects that make up that whole. Others will have a weaker relationship, where deleting an object of the whole class will leave the objects that make up the whole untouched. For example, if an invoice is deleted, the lines that make up that invoice would be deleted as well, as they don't have an existence independent of the whole invoice. On the other hand, an airline may offer a flight route from London to Sydney, consisting of flight legs from London to Dubai, Dubai to Bangkok, and Bangkok to Sydney. The Dubai to Bangkok flight leg may also be used in a route from Paris to Taipei, going from Paris to Dubai, Dubai to Bangkok, and Bangkok to Taipei. The Dubai to Bangkok flight leg has an existence that is not dependent on either one of the whole routes of which it is a part. So, ceasing to offer the London-Sydney route shouldn't result in deletion of the Dubai-Bangkok flight leg. In UML, composition represents the stronger kind of relationship. In our home automation system, a schedule is composed of a number of timed events, but each timed event only exists in one schedule. If there's no requirement for timed events to exist independently of a schedule, then this would be a composition relationship. We show the composition relationship with the black diamond shape at the end of the whole. That is the class that is made up of objects of the class at the other end of the relationship. In UML, aggregation represents the weaker kind of relationship. In our home automation system, a trigger list is made up of a number of triggered events, but the triggered events can belong to more than one trigger list, so can exist independently of any particular trigger list. So this is represented by an aggregation relationship. We show the aggregation relationship with the unfilled diamond shape at the end of the whole. That is the class that's made up of objects of the class at the other end of the relationship. Now let's have a look at how we can create these relationships in the model. Here's our class diagram. I'm going to zoom in slightly. At the moment, the relationship between schedule and timed event is an association. We're going to change it into a composition. To illustrate how to do this from scratch, I'm going to delete the existing association and add a new composition relationship. I've right-clicked on the association and selected Delete Connector from the menu. Enterprise Architect allows us either to delete the association just from the diagram or from the whole model. I'm going to delete this from the model. Now I'm going to select Composition from the Class Relationships part of the toolbox. Composition is the line with a filled diamond at the end. To add a composition, I start at the part end of the relationship and drag to the whole end. I can now add additional information to this composition relationship, starting with a name. I'll do as much as possible through the Properties dialog. I'll give the composition the name is composed of. I'll go to the Roles page, and here I can add in the name of the source role, which is Events. And I can add in the multiplicity, which is 1 ... star. So there must be at least one, but there could be many. I'll make it navigable from scheduled timed event. I'm not going to change the navigability of the target role. EA has defaulted it to be navigable, which may or may not be the case in reality. The default values for the role name and multiplicity are schedule and exactly 1 and don't need to be shown. I'll just tidy the diagram up. Now I simply need to add the direction to the label. So I right-click on the label and select Direction and then to Source. So a schedule is composed of timed events. The diagram now shows that composition relationship between schedule and timed event. To add an aggregation, I'm going to create a new class diagram. You can have a number of different diagrams for different purposes that show different views of the underlying model. I'm going to create a diagram called Home Network in order to show a specific aspect of the system. I'll add another diagram in the domain package. So I right-click on the domain package, not the existing domain diagram, and select Add Diagram. In the dialog box, I select Class Diagram, already selected, and I give the new diagram a name, which is going to be Home Network. I click on OK and it opens up my new diagram. Now I want to add an existing class to this diagram. Where you have classes in the project browser, it's possible to drag them into a diagram. So I'm going to select Device and drag it into the diagram pane. When I add a class to a diagram in Enterprise Architect, I have to decide whether I'm adding it to the diagram as just a link to the existing class, which is the default here, as a new instance of device, an object, or as a subclass of device. In this case, I'm just creating a link to the existing device class, so I leave the default as link. I'm now going to add a new class called configuration and add that to the diagram. I could add it in the way that I've added classes before, using the toolbox. Some tools allow you to add elements to diagrams by right-clicking in the diagram pane and selecting the kind of element to add. I can do that in Enterprise Architect by right-clicking in the diagram pane and selecting New Element or Connector, and then in this case, Class, from the list of types of diagram element. I'll call this class Configuration. Now I'll create an aggregation relationship between configuration and device. I'll use the quick linker this time to show how it works with relationships other than associations. Configuration is already selected, so I click on the arrow at the top right-hand corner of the class and drag it down to device. I'm going to select aggregation to part, as I'm drawing the aggregation from the whole to the part. Now I'm going to name the aggregation and set the multiplicity values in the properties dialog. I'm going to call this aggregation relationship contains. I'll go to the roles page and set the multiplicities. I go to the source role and set the multiplicity there and name the role devices. And in the target role, I'll set the multiplicity there. Both are 0 ... That adds the aggregation. The meaning of this is that a configuration may contain 0 or more devices, and a device may be contained by 0 or more configurations. That means that a device may not belong to any configurations, so it could exist entirely independently, or it could belong to one configuration or many configurations. So, in this movie, I've shown you how to add a composition relationship and an aggregation relationship, and to set properties on those relationships in the same way as we did with associations.